President. Article 52 to 78 and Part 5 of the Constitution deal with the Union Executive. Article 52 to 78. Article 52 to 78 and Part 5 of the Constitution deal with the Union Executive. Article 52 to 78 and Part 4 of the Constitution deal with the Union Executive. Article 52 to 78. Article 52 to 78. Article 52 to 78 and Part 5 of the Constitution deal with the Union Executive. The Union Executive consists of the President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, and the Attorney General of India. Union Executive consists of the President, the Vice President, Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers, and the Attorney General of India. And the Union Executive consists of the Union Executive consists of the President, Vice President, Prime Minister, President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, and the Attorney General of India. The President is the head of Indian state. The President is the head of the Indian state. The President is the head of the Indian state. He is the first citizen of India and acts as a symbol of unity, integrity, and solidarity of the nation. Election of the President. The President is elected not directly by the people but by members of electoral college consisting of the elected members of both the houses of parliament, the elected members of the legislative assembly of the state, and the elected member of the legislative assemblies of the UTs and Delhi and Puducherry. The elected member of parliament, he is elected indirectly by the members of an electoral college consisting of the elected members of both the houses of parliament, the elected members of both the legislative assemblies of the state, and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of the UT of Delhi and Puducherry. Thus, the nominated member of both the houses of parliament, the nominated member of the state legislative assembly members, both elected and nominated of the state legislative council in case of the bicameral legislation, the nominated member of the legislative assemblies of Delhi and Puducherry do not participate in the election of the president. Where an assembly is dissolved, the member cease to be qualified to vote in presidential election. Where an assembly is dissolved, the member cease to be qualified to vote in presidential election. Even if fresh election to the dissolved assembly are not held before the presidential election. Even if fresh election to the dissolved assembly are not held before the presidential election. The Constitution provides that there shall be uniformity in the scale of representation. The Constitution provides that there shall be uniformity in the scale of representation of different states as well as parity between the states as a whole and the union at the election of the president. The Constitution provides that there shall be uniformity in the scale of representation of different states. And the Constitution provides that there shall be uniformity in the scale of representation of different states as well as parity between the states as a whole and the union at the election of the president. To achieve this, the number of votes which each elected member of the legislative assembly of each state of the parliament is entitled to cast at such election shall be determined in the following manner. Each elected member of the legislative assembly of each state and the parliament is entitled to cast at such election shall be determined in the following manner. Every elected member of the legislative assembly of a state shall have as many votes as are multiples of 1000 in the quotient obtained by member of legislative assembly obtained by dividing the population of the state, total population of the state, by the total number of elected members of that assembly. This can be expressed as total value of the vote of an MLA is equal to total population of the state upon total number of elected members in the state assembly, total population of state upon total number of elected members in the state legislative assembly, total population of state upon total number of elected members in the state legislative assembly, total population of state upon total number of elected members in the state legislative assembly, total population of state upon total number of elected members in the state legislative assembly divided by 1000. Every elected member of either house of parliament shall have such number of votes as may be obtained by dividing the total number of votes assigned to members of the legislative assemblies. Every elected member of either house of parliament shall have such number of votes as may be obtained by dividing the total number of votes assigned to members of the legislative assemblies, MLAs of all the state, and the total number of elected members for the houses of parliament. Total value of votes of all, value of the vote of an MP is equal to total value of votes of all the MLAs of all state upon total number of elected members of parliament upon total number of elected members of parliament upon total number of elected members of parliament. The president's election is held in accordance with the system of proportional representation by means of single transfer every vote system of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote, and voting is by secret ballot. The president's election is held in accordance with the system of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote, and the voting is by secret ballot. The system ensures that this This system ensures that the successful candidate is chosen by the absolute majority of votes. A candidate, in order to be declared elected to the office of president, must secure a fixed quota of votes. A candidate, in order to be declared elected to the office of president, must secure a fixed quota of votes. Quota is determined by dividing the total number of valid votes. The quota of votes is determined by dividing the total number of valid votes polled by the number of candidates to be elected. Here, only one candidate is to be elected as president. The quota vote is determined by dividing the total number of valid votes polled by the number of candidates. The quota vote is determined by dividing the total number of valid votes polled by the number of candidates to be elected. Here, only one candidate is to be elected as president plus 1, and adding 1 to the question. The formula can be expressed as total number of valid votes polled electoral quota, total number of valid vote polls upon total number of candidates plus 1 and plus 1 in the quotient. Each member of electoral college is given only one ballot paper. The voter, while casting his vote, is required to indicate his preferences by marking 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. against the names of the candidate. This means that the voter can indicate as many preferences as there are candidates in the fray. In the first phase, the first preference votes are counted in case a candidate secures the required vote in this phase. In the first phase, the first preference votes are counted. In the very first phase, the first preference votes are counted. In case a candidate secures the required quota in this phase, he is declared elected. Otherwise, the process of transfer of vote is set in motion. The ballots of the candidates securing the least number of first preference votes are cancelled. The second preference votes are transferred to the first preference votes of other candidates. This process continues till a candidate secures the required quota. All doubts and disputes in connection with the election of the president are required to be decided by the Supreme Court. The decision is final. The election of a person as a president cannot be challenged on the ground that the electoral college was incomplete. The election of person as president cannot be challenged on the ground that the electoral college was incomplete. The election of a person as a president cannot be challenged on the ground that the electoral college was incomplete. The election of a person as a president cannot be challenged on the ground that the electoral college was incomplete. That is, existence of any vacancy among the members of electoral college. In the election of a person as president is declared void with the Supreme Court, acts done by him before the date of declaration of the Supreme Court are not invalidated and continue to remain in force. Some members of the Constituent Assembly criticize the system of indirect election for the president as undemocratic and propose the idea of direct election. However, the Constitution makes the indirect election due to the following reason. The indirect election of the president is in harmony with the parliamentary system of government envisaged in the Constitution. Under the system, the president is only a nominal executive when the real powers are vested in the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. It would have been a nominalist to have the president elected directly with the people and not give him any real power. The direct election of the president would have been very costly and energy consuming. And due to the vast size of the electorate, this is unwarranted, keeping in view that he is only a symbolic head. Some members of the Constituent Assembly suggested that the president should be elected by the members of the two houses of parliament, and some members of the Constituent Assembly suggested that the president should be elected by the members of the two houses of parliament alone. Because of the Constitution did not prefer this as the parliament dominated by one political party would have been natively chosen a candidate from the party, and such president could not represent the state of the Indian Union. The present system makes the president a representative of the union and the states equally. Pointed out in the Constituent Assembly that the expression proportional representation in the case of presidential election is a misnomer. Proportional representation takes place where two or more seats are to be filled. In case of the president, the vacancy is only one. It could better be called a preferential or alternative vote system. Similarly, the expression single transferable vote was also subjected on the ground that no voter has a single vote. Every voter has plural votes. Qualification oath and condition. Qualification for election as president. A person to be eligible for election as president should fulfill the following qualification. He should be a citizen of qualified. He should have completed 35 years of age. He should be qualified for the election as a member of the Lok Sabha. He should be qualified for election as a member of the Lok Sabha. He should be qualified for the election as a member of the Lok Sabha. He should be qualified. He should be qualified. He should be qualified for election as member of the Lok Sabha. Should be qualified for election. He should be qualified for election as a member of the Lok Sabha. Member of the Lok Sabha. He should not hold any office of power under union government or any state government or any local authority or any other public authority, sitting president or vice president of the union, the governor of any state, and a minister of the union or any state is not deemed to hold any office of power and hence qualified as a presidential candidate. Further, the nomination of a candidate for election to the Further, the nomination of a candidate for election to the office of president must be subscribed. Further, the nomination of a candidate for election. Further, the nomination of a candidate for election to the office of president must be subscribed by at least 50 electors as prosperous, and 50 electors as seconders if the candidate has to make a security deposit of 15,000 in the RBI. The security deposit is liable to be forfeited in case the candidate fails to secure 1/6 of the votes polled. The security deposit is liable to be forfeited in case the candidate fails to secure 1/6 of the votes polled. The security needs to be forfeited in case the candidate fails to secure 1/6 of the votes polled. Before 1997, the number of proposals seconders was 10 each, and the amount of security deposit was 2,500. In 1997, they were increased to discourage the non-serious candidate. Author information of the president before entering upon his office. The president has to make and subscribe to an author information in his of the president's wish to faithfully execute the office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the law. To faithfully execute the office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of India. To devote himself to the service and management of the people of India. The office of the president is administered by the Chief Justice of India, and in his absence, the senior magistrates of the Supreme Court available. Any other person acting as president on discharging the function of the president also undertakes a similar oath of information. Conditions of president's office. The Constitution lays on the following condition on the president's office. He should not be a member of either House of Parliament. He should not be a member of either House of Parliament. He should not be a member of either House of Parliament or House of the State Legislature. If any such person is elected as president, he is deemed to have vacated a seat in the House on the date on which he enters upon the office as president. He should not hold any other office of profit. He is entitled without payment of rent to the use of his Rashtrapati Bhavan. He is entitled to such emoluments, allowances, and privileges as may be rated from Parliament. His emoluments and allowances cannot be diminished in his sum of office. In 2018, the Parliament increased the salary of the president from 1.50 to 5 lakh per month. Earlier in 2008, the pension of the retired president was increased to 3 lakh per annum to 50% of his salary per month. The president is entitled to a number of privileges and immunities. The president is entitled to a number of privileges and immunities. He enjoys personal immunity from legal liability. The president is entitled to a number of privileges and immunities. The president is entitled to a number of privileges and immunities. He enjoys personal immunity from legal liability for his official act. He enjoys personal immunity from legal liability for his official act during his term of office. He is immune from any criminal proceeding even in respect of his personal act during his term of office. He is immune from any criminal proceedings even in respect of his personal act. Official act during his term of office. He is immune from any criminal proceeding even in respect of his personal act. He cannot be arrested or imprisoned However, after giving 2 months notice, civil proceedings can be instituted considering the term of office in respect of his personal outcome, impeachment and vacancy term of residence. Office as president also for a term of 5 years from the date on which he enters upon office. However, he can resign from his office at any time by addressing the resignation letter to the vice president appointed by the CGI, but the resignation letter to the vice president. Further, he can also be removed from the office before completion of his term by the process of impeachment. The president can hold office beyond his term of 5 years until a successor is in charge. He is also eligible for election to that office. He may be elected for any number of terms. However, any a person cannot be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Impeachment of the president. The president can be removed from office by a process of impeachment for violation of the constitution. However, the constitution does not define the meaning of the phrase violation of the constitution. The impeachment charges can be initiated by either house of parliament. These charges should be signed by 1/4 member of that house. And these charges should be signed by 1/4 members of the house. Can be initiated by either house. It can be impeachment charges can be initiated. It can be initiated by either house of parliament. These charges should be signed by 1/4 member of that house referring the charges. These charges should be signed by 1/4 member of that house referring the charges, and 14 days notice should be given to the president. After the impeachment resolution is passed by majority of two-thirds of the total membership of that house, it is sent to the other house. After an impeachment resolution is passed by majority of two-thirds of the total membership of that house, it is sent to the other house which will investigate the charges. The president has the right to appear and be represented at such investigation. The president has the right to appear and be represented at such investigation. Of the other house also sustains charges and passes the impeachment resolution by a majority of two-thirds of the total membership. Then the president stands removed from his office from the date on which the resolution is so passed. Thus, an impeachment is a quasi-judicial. In the parliament, in this context, two things should be noted: the nominated member of either of the parliament can participate in the impeachment of the president. The nominated member of either house of parliament can participate in the impeachment of the president, though they do not participate in his election. The elected member of legislative assemblies of states and UTs like Delhi and Puducherry do not participate in the impeachment of the president, though they participate in his election. No president has so far been impeached. Vacancy in the president office. Vacancy in the president's office can occur in any of the following ways: on the expiry of his tenure of 5 years, by his resignation to the vice president, on his removal by the process of impeachment, on his removal by the process of impeachment, by his death, otherwise, for example, when he becomes disqualified to hold office, or when his election is declared void by the Supreme Court. When the vacancy is going to be caused by the expiration of the term of the sitting president, when the vacancy is going to be caused by the expiration of the term of the sitting president, when the vacancy is going to be caused by the expiration of the term of the sitting president. An election to fill the vacancy must be held before the expiration of the term. In case of any delay in conducting the election of the president by any reason, the outgoing president continues to hold office beyond his term of 5 years until his successor is in charge. This is provided with the constitution in order to prevent an interregnum. In this situation, the vice president does not get the opportunity to act as president to decide the function of the president. If the office falls vacant by resignation, removal, death, or otherwise, then election to fill the vacancy should be held within 6 months. Within 6 months. The date of occurrence of such vacancy, the newly elected president remains in office for a full term of 5 years. The newly elected president remains in office for a full term of 5 years on the date he assumes charge of his office. When a vacancy occurs in the office of the president due to his resignation, removal, death, or otherwise, the vice president acts as a president until a new president is elected. अगर वैकेंसी हो रही है ड्यू टू रेजिग्नेशन, रिमूवल, डेथ और अदरवाइज, रेजिग्नेशन, रिमूवल, डेथ और अदरवाइज, the vice president acts as the president until a new president is elected. Further, when the sitting president is unable to discharge his function due to absence unless or otherwise, the vice president discharges his function until the president assumes his office. In case the office of vice president is vacant, the chief justice of India, or if his office is also vacant, the senior most judge of the Supreme Court available act as president or discharges the function of the president. When the president, that is vice president, chief justice of India, the senior most judge of the Supreme Court is acting as a president Powers and functions of the president. The powers enjoyed and the functions performed by the president can be stipulated under the following: executive and legislative power, financial power, judicial power, and diplomatic power, military power, and emergency power. Total 7 powers: executive, legislative, judicial, financial, diplomatic, military, and emergency. Executive, legislative, judicial, financial, diplomatic, military, and emergency powers. Executive power. The executive powers and functions of the president are: all executive action of the government of India formally taken in his name. All executive action of the government of India formally taken in his name. He can make rules specifying the manner in which orders and other instruments made executed in his name shall be authenticated. He can make rules for more convenient transaction of business of the union government and publication of said business of the ministries. He appoints the Prime Minister and the other ministers the whole office during his pleasure. Prime Minister and the other ministers hold office during his pleasure. He appoints the Attorney General of India and determines his remuneration. The Attorney General holds office during the pleasure of the President. Attorney General also pleasure of the President. He appoints the Auditor General of India, the Chief Election Commissioner, other election commission, the chairman and the members of the UPSC, the governance of state, the chairman and member of finance commission, and so on. He can seek any information related to the administration of affairs of the union and proposal for legislation from the Prime Minister. He can seek any information relating to the administration of affairs of the union. He can seek any information related to the administration of affairs of the union and proposal for legislation from the Prime Minister. He can require the Prime Minister to submit for consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which decision has been taken by a minister, but consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which for consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the Council. He can appoint a commission to investigate into the condition of SC/ST and other backward classes. He can appoint an interstate council to promote interstate and interstate cooperation. He directly administers the union territory through the state appointed by him. He can declare any area scheduled area and his powers with respect to the administration of scheduled areas and tribal areas. Power किसके पास होगी? That is the governor. He can declare any area scheduled area and has power with respect to the administration of scheduled areas and tribal areas. Legislative power. The president is an integral part of the Parliament of India and enjoys the following legislative power. He can summon or prorogue the Parliament and dissolve the Lok Sabha. He can also summon and join sitting of both houses of Parliament, which is presided over by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. He can enter the Parliament at the commencement of the first session after each election, the first session of each year. He can send messages to the House of Parliament, whether with respect to a bill pending in the Parliament or otherwise. He can send messages to the House of Parliament. He can send messages to the House of the Parliament. He can send messages to the Houses of Parliament. He can send messages to the House of Parliament with respect to a bill pending in the Parliament or otherwise. He can appoint a member of the Lok Sabha to preside over this proceeding when the office of both the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker falls vacant. Similarly, he can also appoint a member of the Rajya Sabha to preside over its proceeding when the office of both the Chairman and the Deputy Chairman falls vacant. He nominates 12 members of the Rajya Sabha from amongst persons having special knowledge, practical knowledge, literature, science, art, and social service. 12 members from literature, science, art, literature, science, art, and social service, 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 literature, science, art, and social service. He can now exercise on question as to the disqualification of members of the Parliament in consultation with the ECI. Disqualification of members of Parliament in consultation with the ECI is by recommendation of permission is needed to introduce certain types of bills in the Parliament. For example, a bill involving expenditure of the CFI or a bill for the alteration of boundaries of a state or creation of a new state. The alteration of boundaries of state or creation of new state. When a bill is sent to the President after it has been passed by the Parliament, he can. When a bill is sent to the President, when a bill is sent to the President, when a bill is sent to the President after it has been passed by the Parliament, he can give his assent to the bill, withhold his assent to the bill, return the bill if it is not a money bill for consideration of the Parliament. However, if the bill is passed again by the Parliament with or without amendment, the President has to give his assent to the bill. However, if the bill is passed again by the Parliament with or without amendment, the President has to give his assent. When a bill passed by said legislature is notified the Governor for consideration of the President can give his assent, withhold his assent, and direct the governor to return the bill if it is not amenable for reconsideration in the state legislature. It should be noted here that it is not obligated for the president to give a cessation even if the bill is again passed by the state legislation and sent again to him for this consideration. He can promulgate ordinances when the parliament is not in session. He can promulgate ordinances when the parliament is not in session. These ordinances must be approved by the parliament within 6 weeks from its re-assembly. At any time, he lays the reports of the Comptroller and Auditor General, Union Public Service Commission, Finance Commission, and others before the Parliament. He can make regulations for the peace, progress, and good government of the Andaman Nicobar Island. He can make regulations for peace, progress, and good governance of Andaman and Nicobar Island, Lakshadweep. In the case of Puducherry, also the President can legislate regulation, but only when the Assembly is suspended or dissolved. Financial powers, executive power, legislative powers. Financial powers. Many bills can be introduced in the Parliament only with prior recommendation. It causes to be laid before the Parliament. The annual financial budget, that is the union budget, no demand for a grant can be made except on this recommendation. It can make advances out of the contingency fund according to meeting and enforcing expenditure. He constitutes a finance commission after every 55 years to recommend the distribution of revenues between the center and the state. Judicial powers. The judicial powers and mentioned by the President are he appoints the Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court. The judicial powers and pensions of the President are he appoints the Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court. He appoints the Chief Justice and the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court. He appoints the Chief Justice and the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court. He can seek advice. He is appointed by the Chief Justice of India. Veto power. Article 111. Absolute veto artists with the building of a center of the bill passed by the veto power enjoyed by the executive instead can be classified into the following four types. That is, first is the absolute veto. That is, first is the absolute veto. First is the absolute veto. That is withholding of assent to the bill passed by the legislature. Absolute veto. That is withholding of assent to the legislature. Qualified veto which can be overridden by the legislature with a higher majority. Qualified veto which can be overridden by the legislature with a higher majority. Suspensive veto which can be overridden by the legislature with an ordinary majority. Suspensive veto. On the bill passed by the legislature and the upper for the president to punish with three absolute veto, suspensive veto, and pocket veto. There is no qualified veto in the president. proceed with the microprocessor and the three videos of the president will be there explaining along. Private member bill, and when the cabinet does this, cabinet resigns. In 1954, again in 1991, President Arvind Khandelwal withdrew his assent to the salary allowances and pension of Member of Parliament amendment. The bill was passed by the Parliament on the last day before dissolution of Lok Sabha, without altering the previous recommendation of the President. PIP's bill and the allowances and pension of Member of Parliament amendment bill suspends the veto of the President exercises veto when he returns for the consideration of the Parliament. Suspends the veto which can be overridden by the legislature with an ordinary majority. This means that the state legislature cannot override the veto power of the president. Ordinance making power of the president. That is Article 123. Ordinance making power of the president. That is Article 123 of the Constitution empowers the president to promulgate ordinances. Article 123 of the Constitution empowers the president to promulgate ordinances. Article 123 of the Constitution empowers the president to promulgate ordinances during the recess of Parliament. These ordinances have the same force and effect as an act of the Parliament, but are in the nature of temporary laws. The ordinance making part of the most important legislative power of the president. It has been decided and to deal with enforcing or urging matter, but the exercise of this power is subject to the following limitation. It can promulgate an ordinance only when both houses of Parliament are not in session, or when either of the House of Parliament is not in session. He can an ordinance only when both the Houses of Parliament are not in session, or when either of the two Houses of Parliament is not in session. An ordinance can also be issued when only one house is in session. An ordinance can also be issued when only one house is in session, because the law can be passed by both the houses and not by one house alone. An ordinance made when both houses are in session is void. An ordinance made when both houses are in session is void. When both the houses are in session is void. In Cooper's case, Shri, I do not make micro notes for polity. मैं इसे ऐसा हाईलाइट करके रखती हूँ, you can see. और जब एग्ज़ाम होता है तो इसे ही मैं ऐसा रिवाइज कर लेती हूँ, क्योंकि ये ज़्यादा इजी होता है. इतनी बल्कि बुक्स के अगर नोट्स बनाने बैठेंगे तो बहुत टाइम लग जाएगा, बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम कंज्यूम हो जाएगा. In Cooper's case, 1970, the Supreme Court held that president satisfaction can be questioned in a court on the ground of a malevolent. In Cooper's case, 1970, the Supreme Court held that the president's satisfaction can be questioned in a court on the ground of malevolent. In Cooper's case, the Supreme Court held that the president's satisfaction can be questioned in a court on the ground of malevolent. In Cooper's case, 1970, the Supreme Court held that the president's satisfaction can be questioned in a court on the ground of malevolent. This means that the His ordinance making power is co-extensive as regards all matters except duration with the law-making powers of the Parliament. The system implication on ordinance can be issued only on those subjects on which the Parliament can make laws. An ordinance can be issued only on those subjects on which the Parliament can make laws. An ordinance can be issued only on those subjects. An ordinance can be issued only on those subjects on which the Parliament can make laws. The president can also withdraw an ordinance at any time. However, this power of ordinance making is not a discretionary power, and he can promulgate or withdraw an ordinance only on the advice of the CEO. He can withdraw an ordinance at any time, but only on the advice of the council when this is added by the prime minister. He can promulgate or withdraw an ordinance only on the advice of the council of ministers added by the prime minister. Ordinance can be retrospective, and that is, it may come into force from a back that it may be modified or repealed in act of parliament or the ordinance. It can alter and amend a tax law also. By repealing act of parliament or the ordinance, it can alter and amend a tax law. However, it cannot be issued to amend the constitution. The ordinance became part of the president in days with the unusual autonomous to the democratic constitution of the world, including the US and UK. Justification of the ordinance became part of the president to be aware and said in the Constituent Assembly that the mechanism of issuing an ordinance has been devised in order to enable the executive to deal with the situation. The mechanism of issuing an ordinance has been devised in order to enable the executive to deal with the situation that will suddenly and immediately arise in the parliament ordinance session. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said in the Constituent Assembly that the mechanism of issuing an ordinance has been devised in order to enable the executive to deal with the situation that will suddenly and immediately arise in the parliament ordinance session. It was able to get that ordinance became part of the president as well as the election with the national emergency without Article 352. The president can issue an ordinance even when there is no more external regulation for armed rebellion. The will of Congress required it. Whenever a bill seeking to stabilize an ordinance is in place in the Lok Sabha statement explaining the circumstances that are necessitated immediate legislation, the ordinance should also be placed before the House. But the judgment of the Supreme Court in Day-02 case 1987. And this is the court case in which the president's satisfaction can be questioned. The ground of malified in Cooper's case. In Cooper's case 1970, the Supreme Court held that the president's satisfaction can be questioned in a court on the ground of malified. But the judgment of the Supreme Court in these case is highly relevant here. In that case, the court pointed out that between 1967 and 1991, the governor of Bihar promulgated is highly relevant here. In that case, in 1987, DC Vada case 1987 is highly relevant here. In that case, court pointed out that between 1967 to 1981, but the judgment of the Supreme Court in DC Vada case 1987. Between 1967 to 1981, the governor of Bihar promulgated 256 ordinances, and all these were given force for period ranging from 1 to 14 years by promulgation from time to time. The court ruled that successive promulgation of ordinances with the same text without any attempt to get the best for the amount of violation of the Constitution and the ordinance were promulgated is liable to be struck down. It held that the exceptional power of lawmaking to ordinances cannot be used as a substitute for the legislative power of the state legislature. Pardoning power of the president. Article 72 of the Constitution empowers the president to grant pardon to a person who have been tried and convicted of any offence in all cases where the punishment or sentence for an offence against the criminal law. The pardoning power of the president is independent of the judiciary. It is an executive power. The pardoning power of the president is independent of the judiciary. It removes both the sentence conviction and completely absolves the convict and completely absolve the convict from all sentences, punishments and disqualifications. It removes both the sentence and conviction and completely absolves the convict from all sentences, punishment and disqualification. Pardon, it removes both the sentence and the conviction and completely absolves and convict from all sentences, punishment and disqualification. Commutation denotes substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter form. It denotes a substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter form. For example, the sentence being committed to rigorous imprisonment, and that sentence can be committed to rigorous imprisonment, which in turn may be committed to a called simple imprisonment. Commutation, it denotes a substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter form. It denotes a substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter one form. It denotes a substitution of one form of punishment from a rigorous one to a lighter form. For example, the sentence may be committed to rigorous imprisonment, which in turn may be committed to simple imprisonment. Remission. Its character implies reducing the period. It implies reducing the period. Remission implies reducing the period. Remission implies remission implies remission. It implies reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. It implies reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. What is remission? Remission means it implies reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. What is remission? It means reducing the character. It means reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. Remission means it implies reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. Remission means it implies reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. Remission implies a reducing of period of sentence without changing its character. Commutation, transforming to a lighter form, such as death sentence to rigorous imprisonment, and rigorous imprisonment in turn may be commuted to simple imprisonment. Remission implies reducing the period. Remission, that is reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. For example, a sentence of rigorous imprisonment for 2 years may be limited to rigorous imprisonment for 1 year. Respite denotes avoiding a lesser sentence in place of one originally avoided due to some special fact. Respite due to some special fact such as a physical disability or a convict or the pregnancy of a woman offender. Respite due to some special fact. Respite due to some special fact such as physical disability of a convict or the pregnancy of a woman offender. Reprieve, it implies a stay. Reprieve means it implies a stay of the execution of a sentence. Reprieve, it implies a stay of the execution of a sentence. Reprieve implies a stay of the execution of sentence, especially that of that for a temporary period. Its purpose is to enable the convict to have the time to seek pardon or commutation from the president. So first one is pardon, in which the president completely absolves every punishment sentences and disqualification. Then comes the commutation, in which the punishment is reduced from one form of punishment for a lighter form commutation. Like the sentence should be commuted to a lighter form of imprisonment, which in turn can be commuted to simple imprisonment. Pardon, commutation, despite in case of pregnancy. Remission, that is to a lighter form, that is अगर 2 साल की तो 1 साल की कर देंगे. Respite in case of pregnancy. And reprieved, that is stay order from the president. Under Article 161 of the Constitution, the Governor of State also possesses the pardoning power. Article 161 of the Constitution, the Governor of State also possesses the pardoning power. Hence, the Governor can also grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission of punishment, pardon, reprieve, respite, remission of punishment, or suspend and commit the sentence of any person convicted of any offence against the state law. But the pardoning power of the Governor differs from that of the President in the following two aspects. The President can pardon sentences inflicted by court-martial. The President can pardon sentences inflicted by court-martial, that is military court, while the Governor cannot. The President can pardon sentences inflicted by court-martial, that is military courts, while the Governor cannot. The President can pardon that sentence, but the Governor cannot. Even if a state law decides that sentence, the power to grant pardon lies with the President, not the Governor. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Krishnan Zakir Hussain, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Krishnan Zakir Hussain, Bibi Giri Fakrati, Mahima Sanjeev Bharati, Bibi Giri Fakrati, Mahima S. Radhakrishnan, Dr. Zakir Hussain, Radhakrishnan, Dr. Zakir Hussain, Bibi Giri Fakrati, Mahima Sanjeev Bharati, Kenny Jelsen, Venkataraman, Kenny Jelsen, Venkataraman, Dr. Shankar Jal Sharma, K.R. Narayan, Jail Singh, Venkataraman, Shankar Jal Sharma, K.R. Narayan, Dr. Vijay Durga, Vishwadeva Patil, Pranam Mukherjee, Ramnath Govind, Draupadi Murmu, Rajendra Prasad, Krishnan Zakir Hussain, Bibi Giri Fakrati, Fakhruddin Ali, Ahmad Sanjeev Bharati, Kenny Jelsen, Venkataraman, Shankar Jal Sharma, K.R. Narayan, Kenny Jelsen, Venkataraman, Shankar Jal Sharma, K.R. Narayan, Dr. Vijay Durga, Vishwadeva Patil, Pranam Mukherjee, Ramnath Govind, Draupadi Murmu. Governor, Chief Minister, Council of Ministers, and the State Executive consists of the Governor, Chief Minister, Council of Ministers, and the Advocate General of the State. Governor, Chief Minister, Council of Ministers, and the Advocate General of the State. governor is directly elected, where the governor is directly elected, where the governor is directly elected as appointed by Governor General. Therefore, the American model where the governor of state is directly elected was dropped. The Canadian model where the governor of province state is appointed by the Governor General to the center. Therefore, the American model where the governor of state is directly elected was dropped. The Canadian model where the governor of province is appointed by the Governor General was accepted in the Constituent Assembly. The oath of the governor is administered by the Chief Justice of the concerned state High Court. He gives the resignation letter to the president, and the president gives it to the vice president. Governor has no security of tenure and no fixed term of office and will be removed with the president at any time. Surya Narayan vs. Union of India, 1982. Surya Narayan vs. Union of India. Surya Narayan vs. Union of India case. Surya Narayan vs. Union of India case. There should be a tribal welfare ministry in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha. There should be tribal welfare minister. There should be a tribal welfare minister. There should be a tribal welfare minister. Mm, There should be a tribal welfare minister in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. Tribal minister in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha appointed by him. He appoints the chief minister and other minister. They also hold office during a period. There should be tribal welfare minister in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha. There should be a tribal welfare minister in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha appointed by him. He appoints the chief minister and other ministers. They also hold office during his pleasure. There should be a tribal welfare minister in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha appointed by him. He appoints the chief minister and other ministers. They also hold office during his pleasure. There should be tribal welfare minister in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha appointed by him. The state of Bihar was excluded from this provision by the 95th Amendment Act of 2006. Tribal welfare minister. There should be tribal welfare minister in the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha appointed by him. The state of Bihar was excluded from this provision by the 95th Amendment Act of 2006. He nominated 1/6 of the members of the state legislative council from amongst special knowledge of practical experience in literature, science, art, social extradition and cooperative movements. In one case, a reservation is obligated artists with a bill passed with the state legislature named as a petition of the state high court. In addition, the governor can also reserve the bill if it is of the following nature: that is ultra vires, that is against the provision of the constitution, ultra vires opposed to the DPSP against the large interests of the country or grave of national importance, illegal compulsory acquisition of property under Article 31A of the Constitution. He can promulgate ordinances when the state legislature is not in session. He can promulgate ordinances when the state legislature is not in session. He can promulgate ordinances when the state legislature is not in session. x 123 पार्टनर पार 72 चेंज हुआ इसमें बीटा पार x 1 की थी 200 governed with regard to ordinary building he was without decision written the bill and he may reserve the bill for reconsideration of the president. He may return the bill for reconsideration of the houses of the state legislature when a bill is so returned to the houses have to reconsider it within 6 months. The bill is passed with the house or houses again whether without amendment represented to the president for the assent. The president is not bound to give assent to the bill. He may give assent to such a bill or withhold his assent. This is important. That is, the president cannot return a money bill for the reconsideration of the state legislature as in the case of the parliament. The president cannot return a bill for the reconsideration of the state legislature. One 23 and 230. Installed even earlier than the prescribed 6 weeks. this is important that he cannot make an ordinance instruction for the president in 3 days. So that is, if a bill containing the same provision would have required the previous sanction of the president for its introduction into the state legislature, if he would have deemed it necessary to reserve a bill containing the same provision for the consideration of the president, if an act of the state legislature containing the same provision would have been invalid without receiving the president's assent. Comparing the power. Tribal welfare minister for the state of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha, Bihar was accepted by the 94th Amendment Act of 2008, I guess. 2006. Stay. Important question. Upon Article 155 Constitution petition of governor. Constitutional discretion in the case of the reservation of wealth for the consideration of the president. Governor has constitutional discretion. The governor has constitutional discretion. The governor has constitutional discretion in the case of reservation of wealth for the consideration of the president. Recommendation for the imposition of the president rule in the state. Recommendation of the imposition of president rule in the state, exercising his function as the administrator of a joint union territory, and determining the amount payable to the government of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram to an autonomous tribal district council. MATM, these are the other specified areas. MATM, which consists of Meghalaya, Assam, Tripura, and Mizoram. Determining the amount payable by the government of Assam. Determining the amount payable by the government of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram to an autonomous tribal District Council has royalty accruing from licenses for mineral exploration. Royalty accruing from licenses for mineral exploration, seeking information from the Chief Minister with regard to the administrative and legislative matter of the state. Situational discretion. In Maharashtra, establishment of separate development boards for Vidarbha and Marathwada. Gujarat, establishment of separate development board for Rashn Kutch in the case of Gujarat. In the case of Nagaland, with respect to law and order in the state of for so long as internal disturbances in Nagaland, Sangeeta continues also with respect to the administration of tribal areas. Manipur regarding the administration of the hill areas in the state, taken for peace and for ensuring social economic advancement of the different section of the population. Arunachal Pradesh, with respect to law and order in the state, Karnataka, establishment of a separate development board for Hyderabad, Karnataka region. This is a constitution as assigned to overall to the office of government in the Indian federal system is the constitutional head of the state as well as the representative of the center, that is the president. Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. by the members of an electoral college consisting of members of both the houses of parliament. It does not include the members of the state legislative assembly. The oath of office to the Vice President is administered by the President. The oath of office to the Vice President is administered by the President or some person appointed on behalf by him. And he gives his resignation letter to the President, and President gives his resignation letter to the Vice President. He can be removed by a resolution passed by majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. Passed by majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha, majority of all the then members, majority of all the then members, majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. He can be removed by resolution passed by majority of all the then members of Rajya Sabha and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. He can be removed by resolution passed by majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. He can be removed by resolution passed by majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. He can be removed by resolution passed by majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. He can be removed by resolution passed by majority of all the then members of the Rajya Sabha. This resolution can only be introduced in Rajya Sabha only and not in the Lok Sabha. For at least 14 days advance notice has been given. Notably, no ground has been mentioned in the Constitution for his removal. The Vice President can hold office beyond his term of 5 years until a successor is in charge. He is also eligible for election to that office. He may be elected for any number of time. He can act president only for a maximum period of 6 months, within which a new president has to be elected. He can act as president only for a maximum period of 6 months. He can act as president. He can act as president. He can act as president only. He can act as president. He can act as president. He can act as president. He can act as president only for a maximum period of 6 months, within which a new president has to be elected. Further, when the sitting president is unable to discharge his function due to absence, illness, or any other cause, the vice president discharges his function until the president assumes his office. While acting president discharging the function of president, the vice president does not perform the duties of the office of the chairman of the Rajya Sabha. S. Radhakrishnan, Zakir Hussain, Vivek Fakhruddin, Ahmed Ansari, Verity Gyani Jalsingh, Venkataraman, Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma, K.R. Narayanan, Venkataraman, Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma, K.R. Narayanan, Venkataraman. Narayan, Chandra, Vishwadeva Patel, Pranam Mukherjee, Rama Prema. Part duties, partner Panchayat municipalities, incorporated facilities, 10 schedule trade. Part 10 for the schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 stands for schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 stand for the schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 stand for the schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 which stands for the schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 which stands for the schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 which stands for the schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 which stands for the schedule and tribal areas. Part 10 which stands for schedule and the tribal areas. Pomodoro monthly and 92nd Amendment. 92nd Amendment Act. 92nd Amendment Act. 92nd Amendment Act. Was renamed 2003. Government of India Act of 1935, Federal Scheme Office of Governor. Office of Governor has been taken from the Government of India Act of 1935. Government of India Act of 1935, Federal Scheme Office of Governor. Judiciary, Public Service Commission, Emergency Provision and Administrative Intelligence, British Constitution, Parliamentary Government, Rule of Law, Legislative Procedure, Single Citizenship, Cabinet System, Executive, Parliamentary Privileges, and bicameralism, US Constitution, Fundamental Independence, Judicial impeachment of the President, removal of the Supreme Court and High Court judges, and post Vice President, Irish Constitution, DPSP, nomination of members to the Rajya Sabha, nomination of the members, and nomination of members to the Rajya Sabha, the nomination of members to the Rajya Sabha, and method of election of the President, and method of election of the President. Method of election of the President has been taken from the Irish Constitution. Canadian Constitution, Federation of the Strong Centre, vesting of legislative power in the centre, appointment of state governor by the centre, appointment of the state governor by the centre, and the position of governor has been taken from the Government of India Act of 1835. The appointment of governor by the centre has been taken by the Canadian Constitution, and advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Australian Constitution concurrent list. Australian Constitution concurrent list. Freedom of trade, commerce and intercourse, and joint sitting of the 2011. Female Constitution of Germany, suspension of FR during emergency. Soviet Union, fundamental duties, and the concept of justice, social, economic, and political life in the preamble, and the concept of justice, and the concept of justice, French Constitution, Republic, and the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity in the preamble, French Constitution, Republic, the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity in the preamble, French Constitution, Republic, and the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity in the preamble, French Constitution, Republic, and the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity in the preamble, French Constitution, Republic, and the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity in the preamble, Soviet Union, only justice, South African Constitution, procedure for the amendment of the Constitution, election of member of the Rajya Sabha, nomination of member to the Rajya Sabha, Irish Constitution, South African Constitution, Japanese Constitution, procedure established by law, procedure established by law, procedure established by law. Objectives, resolution, society, sovereign, social, secular, democratic republic. In the Bari Union case, 1960, it was said that preamble is not a part of the constitution. But in the case of the Bharati case 1923, it was upheld that preamble is an integral part of the constitution of India. In the Alliance of India case, it was again upheld that preamble is an integral part of the Constitution of India in 1995. Birubari Union case, case one of the Bharati case, Alliance of India case, Birubari Union case, case one of the Bharati case, Birubari Union case, case one of the Bharati case, and Alliance of India case, Birubari Union case, case one of the Bharati case, and the Alliance of India case. A referendum initiative, recall, and plebiscite initiative and proposable. A referendum whereby proposed legislation is reported to the electorate for settlement by direct referendum. A proposed legislation is reported to the electorate for the settlement by direct vote. Next is recall, remove a representative or an officer. Plebiscite is a method of obtaining the opinion of India's people on an issue of public participation used to resolve the territorial disputes. It is usually used to resolve the territorial dispute. It is usually used to resolve the territorial disputes. It is usually used to resolve the territorial disputes. It is usually used to resolve the territorial disputes. It is usually used to resolve the territorial disputes. What that is plebiscite. President, Vice President, Governor. President, election of the president is done indirectly by the formation of an electoral college. Special electoral college बनता है which consists of elected members of both houses of parliament and elected members of the state legislative assemblies and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of Delhi, Puducherry. ठीक है, 3 चीज़ें होती हैं. Nominated members do not participate, and nominated members do not participate of legislative assembly and legislative council do not participate. ठीक है. Qualification होता है, condition qualification should be citizen of India, 35 years of age, and लोक सभा इलेक्शन के लिए एलिजिबिलिटी पूरी करनी चाहिए. 17th. He should be qualified for election as a member of the Lok Sabha. He should be qualified for election as a member of the Lok Sabha. He should be qualified for the election as a member of the Lok Sabha. Election single transferable vote, proportional representation by means of single transferable vote और secret ballot से उनका होता है. और secret ballot total number of candidates और total number of total number of valid votes polled, total number of valid votes polled, total number of valid votes polled upon 1 plus 1 or plus 1, or value of the vote of an MLA is equals to total population of the state upon divided by total number of elected members in the state legislative assembly into 1/1000. Value of the vote of an MLA is equals to total population of the state upon value of the vote of an MLA. Total number of value of the vote of an MLA is equals to total population of state upon total number of elected in the state legislative assembly. Total number of elected members in the state legislative assembly into 1/1000. And value of the vote of an MP is equals to total value of votes of all MLAs of all state for total number of elected member of the parliament. It is easy. Value of the vote of an MLA. Value of the vote of an MLA is equals to total population of the state upon divided by total number of elected members in the state legislative assemblies into 1/1000, and the value of the vote of an MP is equals to total of the value of the vote of an MLA divided by total number of the elected total of the elected members of member of parliament. Total number of elected members of parliament. Total number of elected members of parliament. Got it. Terms and vacancy. Terms for a period of 5 years period is mentioned. Period is mentioned, that is for 5 years. He is appointed by the Chief Justice of India, और अगर वो नहीं होगी तो Senior Most Judge of the Supreme Court, and resignation letter to the Vice President, and impeachment is done by it can be initiated by both the houses of the Parliament. A 14 days notice is required to be given to the President, and members of both the houses of the Parliament, इसमें nominated member भी include हो जाते हैं, but the members who are included in the election, that is the members of state assemblies, are not included in the impeachment of the President. These charges, the impeachment charges can be initiated by either house of Parliament. These charges should be signed by 1/4 member of the House. These charges should be assigned by 1/4 member of the House. These charges should be assigned by these charges should be assigned by 1/4 member of the House. These charges should be assigned by 1/4 members of the House. These charges should be assigned by 1/4 members of the House. These charges should be assigned by 1/4 member of the House. These charges should be signed by 1/4 members of the House. These charges should be signed by 1/4 member of the House. Majority of the total membership of that House. Majority, special majority से pass हो जाता है. That is the majority of the total membership of that House. It is passed on to the other House, or other House which should investigate the charges. The President has a right to appear. The other House also sustains and passes the impeachment resolution by majority of the total membership. Then the President stands removed from his office, and no President has so far been impeached. Powers and functions. Powers: some legislative, executive, judicial, financial, diplomatic, emergency, and military. Total 7 functions is President के. 12 members nominate करना. Literature, science, art, and social service. He can declare any area as scheduled area. Veto power of the President. Veto power of the President is mentioned in Article 111 of the Constitution, and there are 4 kinds of vetoes. Absolute veto, मतलब withhold कर लिया ऐसे नहीं हो. qualified veto, but it is not practiced by the Indian president as it required special majority um, in the case of the repassage of the bill. So it is not a qualified veto, but it is a suspensive veto that is done by a simple majority. That is when the bill is written by the president to the parliament, and if both the houses again present the bill to the president, then he is bound to give his assent to the bill. ठीक है. एब्सोल्यूट वीटो हो गई, सस्पेंसिव वीटो हो गई, नहीं होती है, एंड पॉकेट वीटो. There are 4 kinds of vetoes. Pocket veto. An absolute veto withholding of assent is the case with respect to private members' bill. Absolute veto with respect to the private members' bill. With respect to the government bill, when the cabinet resigns, and with respect to the government bill, and with respect to the government bill, and it is respect to the government bill when it is with respect to the government bill when the cabinet resigns. When the cabinet resigns. Speaking for the president, Article 1, 2, 3. कूपर केस में बोला गया था ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर इज justiciable in the court of law and it is not up to the president's satisfaction. Okay. Cooper case 1970 and in the DC Vadwa case 1987 that we cannot promulgate ordinance many number of times. Okay. Pardoning power, Article 72, pardon commute to a lighter form, that is rigorous imprisonment to a death sentence to rigorous imprisonment and rigorous imprisonment to a light one, or a remission. Respite is for pregnancy and old age people, previous for stay order over the death sentence, and remission is for to a lighter form. Commutation is for lighter form and remission is for reducing the period of the sentence. Remission, that is reducing the period of the sentence without changing its character. Remission, that is reducing the period of the sentence without changing its character. Remission is reducing the period of the sentence without changing its character. Constitution protection of the president, Article 54 and then 74 and 75, 74. PM plus COM to aid and advise the president, and in Article 75 that they apply the collective responsibility to the Lok Sabha. Some of the discretionary powers to him. Article 53, the executive power of the union, not 54 because president is mentioned in Article 52. So executive power of the union shall be vested in president. The executive power of the union shall be vested in president and shall be exercised by him. Executive of the union shall be vested in president. Appointment of governor by the center by the president under his hand and seal. So governor's office. 7th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1956 that a person can be governor of 2 or more states. Pleasure of resident, powers and functions, constitutional position. Ordinance making power 123 and 213 in the case of the governor. Then pardoning power 72 161 and ordinance making power veto 111 and 200 and 201 in the case of reservation of a bill for the president. Okay. Governor is on the lines. The concept of governor, that is the governor to be appointed by the central government, and that is the president, is taken from the Canadian Constitution, and vice president is taken from the US Constitution. श्री, यू हैव आस्क्ड कि नोट मेकिंग या फिर माइक्रो नोट मेकिंग ज़रूरी है या फिर नहीं। तो इफ़ यू आर वॉचिंग दिस देन ये देखो, ये म्यूनसिपैलिटीज़ और पंचायत वाला चैप्टर है। इसमें बहुत सारे ऐसे फैक्ट्स हैं जो हम भूल जाते हैं यूजुअली। तो आप ऐसा कर सकते हो कि ऐसे 1 पेज बनाया, इसको छोटे छोटे पार्ट्स में लाइक ऐसे, या फिर इसको और ऐसे भी फोल्ड कर सकते हो, और उसको छोटा छोटा है ना ऐसे मेंशन कर लो जो भी चीज़ आप भूल रहे हो। जैसे मैं ना सारी कमिटीज़ की जो भी रिकमेंडेशंस थी वो मैं भूल जाती हूँ मोस्टली, तो मैंने उसे अपनी तरह से यहाँ पे ऐसे यू कैन सी ओवर हियर कि मैंने ऐसे लिखा हुआ है, और फिर उसे ना पार्ट्स में से फ्लो चार्ट्स के थ्रू डिस्क्राइब किया हुआ है। और ज़्यादा बड़े बड़े सेंटेंसेस नहीं लिखने हैं, सिर्फ जो इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट है उसको लिख करके उसे मार्क करना है, ताकि रिविज़न के टाइम पे आसानी हो।